So Willow's obviously crying quite a bit. Hello everybody. How y'all doing? There was more chat today before the stream than I think I've ever seen. So hi Matt, Darren came and went, Steve was here. Hi John or Jay Young. Hi Andy. Hello. So I'm just trying to sort something out that none of you will care about, but that's what we're doing. Oh, give me that ad revenue. Oh, hot damn. Give me that. I'll type that so you can see it. Give me that. I do apologize if you can hear Willow. Hi Craig, I hope you're doing very well. How are you today? I realized that I always say like, I hope you're doing very well. But really I could just say like, how are you? Hi Johan, how are you today? So let me what am I doing? Hello. Testing. Oh, I've made a terrible mistake. I've not got the chat on the screen. Oh, I'm behind today. Hi, Julio. There is a mark on my screen that was randomly covering up your name. Hi, Tony. I hope you're doing all right. So this here, this will say like when people super chat and pledge and become members and stuff like that. But I think because it's the first time it's on, it doesn't recognize people's previous super chats like Tony's and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's how it is. Not bad, despite having do you actually have the coronavirus? Because if that's so, Johan, that you'll literally be the first person I've ever spoken to, and I don't mean to find that so frivolous, but I hope you're doing completely all right. Obviously, I hope it's not taking you. You know what I mean. I hope it's like a how to say that. I hope it's not very severe. Such a weird phrase. It could be the beer. So bear with me a second whilst I get the chat on the screen, because I have been pretty much amateurish here. I normally try and get the chat on in a doc on OBS so that I can actually read it. The bug, unfortunately, all that is sad times. Yeah, beer wise, yeah, I don't drink, and even when I did drink, I never liked lager or beer or whatever it is. But yeah, I hope you're doing okay, Johan. I hope you don't have any like existing conditions and you're on the healthy kind of spectrum, obviously. But yeah, bear with me a second. Hi Darren, how you doing? How are you doing? All right. It is Tuesday. I'm obviously having some technical difficulties due to my maximum professionalism attitude. Just sort of went live today without considering all the stuff that I normally do before the stream. Honestly, I'm also going bald. It's depressing. You're good. Very well. Very good. I went to a hotel called Corona. So Corona, I think, means like crown, something like that. So like Corona is probably like, hey, we're the best hotel. It's like places that were called like Isis and stuff like that. It's like a Greek goddess or something like that. Like not historical, but like a, I don't want to say mythical either, but you know what I mean. Something called Isis. So there's like dogs are called it. I think like Catwoman's cat is called Isis, the Egyptian goddess. There you go, real big Andy. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's in Spanish. I'm not sure what language it is. It's just another mouthful, a little live, and he knows nothing more. Yeah, so I think that's the thing, isn't it, Johan? Like for you, hopefully it remains to be. It does make the cat connection make sense. Hopefully for you, it remains to be not serious and it is mild. But obviously for people with issues, or even some people who don't have issues, it can obviously be a little bit more like severe. So there we go. Have I got what I was getting up on screen? Yes, sort of. Bear with me a second. There is some other stuff I was trying to do, but badly. But there you have it. Yeah, so if anybody been doing anything interested in making terrain today? Today's topic is going to be about 3D printing, because we always skirt on it as like a topic, but we've never, as far as I know, we've not actually spoke about it. And I've got to say, I'm very much on the fence of buying a 3D printer. So that's where I'm at, but we'll see what we can do. Just bear with me a second, sorry. As I said, this was some maximum professionalism moments here. Can't seem to schedule that. Okay, that's interesting. I did. So Craig, I absolutely did. So I had an FDM printer, and that's one thing I want to talk about as well. Like, so I had an FDM printer, and the reason I got rid of it is because I wasn't using it. And the reason I wasn't using it is because one, the lines, which we spoke about before, but really the lines weren't even the most important thing. It was the time. So maybe it was completely safe, but I was not happy to just let it go and to just leave it and let it print forever. So if I was going to do really buildings, I found it's either buildings or really small things. That seems to be like the extremities. And I found that if I was doing really small things, then I'd probably be better getting a resin printer. If I'm doing really big things, then I need to sort of time them and do them at the weekends and stuff like that. So what kind of 3D Hero Quest is something I'm actually interested in making after seeing that Warcry board, which we might have a look at today. Some printers are safe, yeah, and I don't know the difference between the two, so it feels like this isn't on my face. I really need something on this back wall, by the way, and I was gonna get have you seen those nano leaves that are like those lights? Yeah, they're like 100 odd quid. I ain't getting one. So I was tempted to just get like a poster or something, but I don't really know what to get. Maybe I should just get the phrase maximum professionalism written on the wall. So bear with me. I'm not quite ready to chat with 3D printing, so we're all jumping on board. But yeah, so I basically probably want a resin printer, I think, probably. But the Anycubic Photon S is interesting, and that's another thing. Like the cost of the filament's expensive, FDM a bit cheaper, but you know the quality is not technically as good and stuff like that. So just bear with me a second. As I said, I was ill prepared for the stream. It's also very hot in here today, even though it's been absolutely raining. It's possible to start a fire one if you try hard enough, but it's not common, and it's not more common than other electrical fires. But again, I think it's not just that; it's also the risk of the print failing and that kind of stuff. I don't know why I'm so skeptical about it. Do I know the differences? The difference between the one-hole duplicate is filament, yeah, and the Anycubic Photon S is the newer. Is that the newer, or is that the Pro? The newer version of the resin one that they do, isn't it? I think. And Knife and Foam is a classic, though. To be fair, Matt. Love-hate relationship. So just bear with me a second. I'm being very bad, but this is some last-minute kind of decision-making going on here. So bear with. I do apologise. I've started the conversation, you know, not here to finish it necessarily because my head's away. There we go. Elegoo Saturn. Is that? Yeah, that's the one that's massive, isn't it? The problem I have with a massive resin printer. Let's have a look. Talk. The problem I have with massive resin printers is simply cost. Like, I think the resin just is expensive. So, yeah. I need to get this chat on the screen a little bit properly. It's I'm doing a very bad job of reading it all today. So let's go back up a little bit. Do bear with me a second. Most of the ones you can still buy have the thermal runaway protection, which prevents it from overheating. The thing is now, I'm not going to buy an FDM printer. I'm not going to go back purely because of it's not like the quality is bad, but when there's like the quality of the resin stuff is just so good. So there you have. It's possible to start a fire one. Yeah, we read that. Matt has a Knife and Some Foam, which is a classic. An Ender 3. Elegoo Saturn is coming out soon. Yeah, when is that coming out? When is the Elegoo Saturn coming out? What are the monochrome MSLA printers? Are they the ones that were on Kickstarter? Is that a filament-based one? You've made tons of terrain, and after about 8 months, I have it working to where I'm not replacing parts every 3 to 4 prints. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The resin's going to be super expensive. You run it overnight when you're out in the house. If I didn't, it would be useless. And that's the thing. I'm just not prepared to let it run. I'm not prepared to let them run. I don't know why. I think I'd be a little bit more prepared to let them run if I had, well, when I bought one, I had the Maker Select version 2. If I had the auto bed leveling. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but I always had a bit of a problem with adhesion because it was very difficult to get the beds level, even with the sheet of paper, and it's like, oh, I can't bother doing that every time. So if the bed would auto level, then I'd be more confident the print would be successful. Then I'd be more likely to, in my head, let it run, or like set up a system, where I could monitor it remotely with like a webcam. There's a guy at my work, and he literally has like a webcam on his 3D printer at home, and I think he's got something where he can switch it off with like a power, like a phone app or something like that. Now, I did buy a plug where you can sort of switch it off, but I think you have to be on the Wi-Fi to do it, which is a bit annoying. I'd love to have a 3D printer, but so there is always obviously a different question of whether or not you enjoy making the terrain versus you enjoy printing the terrain. It's going to get iffy, I think, as the quality. Well, the quality of the resin printers are so good that you almost can't argue with it. It's whether or not that quality is worth that time, or whether or not it's just worth quickly cutting out some foam. So MSLA is a type of resin printer that makes a layer at a time, and the monochrome filters let you use more efficient, high efficient. Okay. I sort of imagine that as like a brighter screen. The Octopi or something like that. Yeah, so I bought a cheap plug that lets you control it like via an app, but I don't think I could control it if I wasn't on the same Wi-Fi, which not really the point. So, but I've had the music on through the speaker. I don't know if anybody's heard that, but yeah. So. Yeah, that wasn't really the point. Like, I wanted to be able to control. What I actually bought it for was we have crap internet here, BT, Virgin, you know what I'm talking about. What I actually wanted it for was so that when I was having internet problems, I could literally just turn off the internet and turn it back on. The problem with that is I could turn it off, but then the Wi-Fi would go off and I couldn't turn it back on. And when I realised that, I was like, what an idiot. Hi, Just Kev, how are you? Hope you're doing very well. Yeah, so let's maybe, I sort of wanted to write some of this down to sort of structure it a little bit. I'm not really 100% sure how to structure these. If anybody's watched like Blackjack Legacy, and he comes on and does like a 20-minute spiel about what it exactly is and all of his talking points, and then he engages, and I'm like, oh, that guy is too professional for me. Like that's true. That's true professionalism as opposed to maximum professionalism. Photoness to make 3D game pieces such as, yeah. So I think like that's the thing. If we let's have a look at the facts, right? You got to run for a work call. Oh, don't worry, Andy, it's perfect. Thank you very much for coming. You love your FDM printer. It's not perfect. Yeah, and I think the cost of the filament and stuff like that is really good. And a lot of people like that. The lines don't necessarily matter to a lot of people, and especially we talked about the 3-foot kind of distance. You can't really see them that easily, so it's not really a problem. If you require high level of detail, then resin is the way to go. Yeah, I'm very intrigued. Does anybody know how much? Wait, let's get this up on the screen. Will this be on the screen? It is on the screen because I've gone into private mode. Elegoo Saturn. Anybody know how much this is? I'll tell you what. It's hopefully it's not $7,000 because I would not be buying that. I'm very intrigued by the name of this site, Bang Good. hey, randomly. For anybody who was here last week, I got one of my diggers. I'm not sure which one. I don't remember ordering just one, so I'll have to see where I got this from. I'll tell you what, it wasn't. I don't think it was Amazon. Anyway, I've got one of them, and to be fair, the digger arm looks pretty cool. So we got one. So the video is potentially on. So there we go. It's about 500. Oh, hi Carlos, by the way. I hope you're doing very well. 500. What's interesting with the 3D printer people is they obviously give stuff to YouTubers and stuff like that. So it makes me think it's been out for ages, but it's not even available yet, which is frustrating. it may have been. Oh, Widow was coughing there for whatever reason. So I don't know if we can even, how I can even find this. You can get the mouse one, yeah. So if anything, I'm unlikely to get the big one for the same reason I'm unlikely to get an FDM printer. Is the same reason I'm unlikely to get a big resin printer. Time, because they're not quicker really by any sort of. I mean, they may be a little bit or whatever. It depends on how your layer size and stuff like that. But if you're going to print a big building, it's still going to take 10 hours, 20, whatever. You know what I mean? So, and it's going to cost more because the resin costs more than the FDM. So I'm not really interested in that. I am more interested personally in the smaller printer and printing like greebles and accessories for a build or whatever, rather than say do the whole build in something. Now I could, you know, if you're doing like, if the build is a rune marking or whatever, or a table or a desk or whatever, then yeah, I can understand why you would just print that and call that a day. But yeah, there you go. Well, the bigger one is quicker because it's however long a layer takes is how long a layer takes, no matter. Yeah, so I mean that's also the one thing about resin printers is you could print multiple, as long as it fits on the print bed, you can print multiple things and it not affect the speed. Whereas the FDM, that's not the case. So that'll be interesting. I mean, that's the thing. I think eventually, if you have a big print bed with cheaper resin, that is quick. I mean, you've literally nailed everything, and I think terrain making as a whole will sort of suffer to one extent. Print stuff like those, yeah, exactly. So that, I think in the short term, and probably for the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, that's probably what I think is the correct thing for terrain. Unless you want to have an FDM printer, but if you want like that nice mix of traditional crafting and stuff, then really I think that's the way to go. So in the UK, from 3D Jake, whoever 3D Jake is, obviously they're out of stock because they're not in stock. They've not been sold. We're seeing £422. Can we get a secondary source on that pricing from the masters themselves? This would be in USD. Can't actually see printers here. Product. Nope. Not going to bother with that site. So, I mean, we've seen an indication of price there. Can't necessarily see another, but we'll just take, somebody said 500 before, and we found one for 422, so yeah, it's probably about, that makes sense. So, Jimmy says, I mostly wargaming the smaller scales, 15mm and lower, and print loads of vehicles on your Maker 2. Detail is very good and it's quite fast. What's a Maker Bot 2? Let me have a look at that. So, yeah, I probably will buy a resin printer at some point, and I do honestly think that 3D printing as a whole will drastically change terrain making. I can't see a world where, I was going to say a universe, but that's a bit dramatic. I can't see a world where in 20 years there's not very easy 3D printing. Like, I just can't see that. I think that must be the case for most people. For people who live in sort of like Western countries, I think you'll just somewhere you'll have access to a printer that's high quality and quick in like at least in 20 years time. So I think, what is the point in doing a lot of I mean, you'll still need to like do the effects, but maybe it'll turn to stuff like lighting, water effects, flocking, all the stuff that you would add onto a 3D print. But yeah, so I think it's going to have an important impact on terrain making at some point. And plenty of these stuff for that Thingiverse. Yeah, Thingiverse is fantastic. So, by the way, let's just have a look. I'll tell you what I've been thinking about lately. Warcry. Oh, can't spell. Warcry. I actually should have done Warhammer Community. So, well, that's another interesting thing, is how does 3D printing affect gaming? And I sort of feel like Games Workshop are ahead of the curve there, because they're already making you buy their rules to a high amount. They're like, we'll have rules for absolutely everything, and you've got to buy the rules. So, but then again, like, you just go the way of Star Wars Legion. If you've got like they say, well, we're going to run the events, we're going to run these official events, and to play our official events, you need to have our official components. And I really you can just do that. The thing with that is Games Workshop don't really run many of their own events because they don't have the space. They've got the Warhammer Worlds in the States and the UK, but that's probably about it. So, yeah. Most tournaments have rules that say, I'm not even I don't even understand why. If you're a tournament that's not an official tournament, are you really that bothered? I mean, who cares if you've 3D printed a tank? I don't think it really matters too much, but that's a debate, I think, it's more a gaming debate and how we go forward. I think they'll just see stuff like you've got to use our components, but I don't know how people like Games Workshop can enforce that when they don't run their own tournaments. It's sort of like you can already see them trying to do that with the fact that they are selling their terrain and making terrain with rules that's actually incorporated into the game. It's like they already know that stuff like that's happening and they're just trying to get there first. I never really used Yegi, or I don't actually know how you pronounce it. But yeah, so what I wanted to look at is these two images. I gotta tell you, I really, really like this. Speaking about 3D printing, one thing I could do is make this in the physical, real style, and maybe 3D print some archways or what have you, some doors. Yeah, but I gotta say, it looks really good. I do have a minor problem with it, in the sense that I don't really like the walls, but that's minor. I'm not going to 3D print a tank. I'm going to 3D print a pile of chainsaws and convert normal guns. Yeah, and that's also another thing. Let's say you release a unit and Space Marines, but you're like, oh well, if I print these extra weapons, I can make this Space Marine a librarian or lieutenant or whatever. There's enough lieutenants in the world. Then sometimes you won't even be able to tell if it's such a close replica to the actual real thing. You won't be able to tell that somebody has just 3D printed a weapon. So it gets even more dicey there. And to be fair, I think games like Star Wars Legion are going to keep coming back to that. It's obvious if you've got the components, because you've got the cards and you've got the models and you've got all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they'll maybe let you proxy one thing because you've lost something, but you're not going to get away with 3D printing an entire army and printing your cards on a piece of paper. That's not going to happen. They'll not let you play. So, yeah, the technology's there for some people, and some people are trying it, but yeah, I don't really know where the correct line should be there. And to be fair, 3D printing when it comes to gameplay is an issue, but when it comes to terrain, everything's up in the air there. You can literally just 3D print anything you want. 3D print a hill, 3D print some trees, 3D print buildings, 3D print whatever, right? A river, a barricade. You can just do whatever you want, and everybody's happy. Unless Games Workshop are like, actually, no, you need to have our terrain to play, which may be what they're heading towards too, but there you go. Johan says, yeah, but what about the custom shoulder pads, original plastic card with custom resin pieces? Yeah, it just said parts, not complete models. If you were to me, I would say decorative bits and custom components would be fine. Yeah, I think I don't think they can fight against that for too long. I just don't feel like Games Workshop have the they won't be able to sustain having that be what am I trying to say there? If you just 3D print an arm and you go into a Warhammer shop, are they going to be bothered? Are they going to be able to identify and distinguish between that and other stuff? No. Are they going to try and do that? No, I don't think they will. But you can pretty much get exact replicas of Games Workshop stuff to print. So if you can't tell the difference, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I think like Star Wars Legion, where you have the other components, which it's a bit more weirdly, and this is actually very strange, it's weirdly harder to replicate the Star Wars Legion cards than it probably is to replicate the miniatures, because most people you don't have access to the machines that would make the cards. So I guess what you need to do is start making stuff that you can't make. So if you're Games Workshop, you produce something that somebody else can't make with a 3D printer or very easily, and you make them so that they require that. That'd be interesting. I'm not 100% sure if that's where we're going to go, but there we go. I hate the Wave Serpent's turret. I'm designing a less toe looking one, but the rest of my server is all Games Workshop. Less toe. I can English. I'm not that good at English myself, but yeah, I'm really tempted to make not a 3D printed version of this, but like an actual real version of that board. But then again, there is always this, which I do also think is pretty bonanza. It's really, really good. I like the fact that they're like, well, we'll actually just give you the basic terrain on this board, but we're going to make our own little like diorama, and it's going to look incredible, which I presume, if I'm honest, is literally all like just foam. Yeah, I think it's just foam. If I'm honest, the rocks on the right there, they look a little bit more like cork bark than, say, anything else. But it looks good. For sure, it looks good. So there you go. I 3D printed a load of combat gauges and points to turn commanders counts for everyone of my local book. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that 3D printers can do. I think we're in a very weird age at the minute where like 3D printers can do a lot of stuff, but not everybody has one, so not everybody's doing it. So let's say I wanted some resin 3D printed parts. I don't actually know anybody with a resin 3D printer. I know somebody with an FDM printer. If I really, really wanted to, I could probably get him to print me something off. If I really, really wanted, he'd probably sell me his 3D printer. But yeah, that's it's interesting. It's an interesting situation where not everybody has one. Combat gauges and really that kind of thing are handy. Arguably, less cut or 3D printer would laser cut, would be equally useful. Yeah, laser cutting. Like some people have access to like makers workshops and stuff like that, or maybe at work or what have you, but not really feasible. And the good thing about laser cutting with MDF is that it's cheap. The MDF is cheap and the terrain is cheap. The only thing it really takes is time. So you see, but then weirdly, you see companies say like TT Combat, who have really, let's actually show it up on the screen, who've got really sort of, when I say really cheap, I don't mean it in a negative way. The Saturn churns out a lot of minis at once. I'm loving mine. You've got a Saturn already, Lee? I thought they weren't available to the end of this year, but have you got one early? I print you stuff if you pay postage. I mean, I appreciate that, but I don't want or need anything. I guess the only thing I would want or need would be little bits of stuff, and I'd probably better buy myself a resin printer at some point. 3D printing by commission is on the rise, and it makes completely sense. And they are so cheap, it's not worth it. I don't know what's not worth it. Do you mean? Sorry, but it's weird because these aren't necessarily cheap, but really the buildings and stuff like that are pretty cheap. Let's see if I can find something quickly. Where am I looking? Let's have a look at sci-fi gothic. That'll do. You missed the pre-orders. I was 63 on the pre-order. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not ready to start pre-ordering and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, look at it. This is £10, so pretty damn cheap in all things considering. That's a massive building. I hadn't seen some of these before, by the way. This is £16, right? Like, it's very difficult sometimes when you can buy stuff. Like, I made a building, right, and I made it out of foam board, and it's like the assembly time. You've got to assemble the MDF kit, but for 16 quid, it's 16 quid for one building versus maybe like £2 worth of materials if you build it yourself. But the quality there is fantastic in terms of, like, you know, there's detail in the handrails. I mean, it looks fantastic for 16 quid. The problem is if you're trying to build a table of that, you're then quickly looking at like 200 quid probably, because that's just like, you're just going to want that much stuff. Whereas obviously if you build it yourself, it is cheaper. But I think MDF cutting is definitely interesting. I personally don't like. I think you need to paint them most of the time because I don't like the burn marks on on this kind of stuff. Like, but you know, I don't like the burn marks. Not a huge fan of the join lines, but you could fill that in with some filler if you wanted. I've never actually have I painted a 3. I don't think I've ever actually painted an MDF kit. But I've painted an MDF walkway, and you could mostly see the detail. I did use spray paint. There was one MDF kit I was going to do for Marvel Crisis Protocol. It was like a street building, and I got it from TT Combat, and it wasn't that it was difficult, but I did it wrong, and I completely ruined it. Like, I spent 15 quid and ruined a building, and I was like, that's annoying. That's frustrating. Yeah. It's not, I don't think it's for me. I'd rather craft it myself, I think, but they're very sturdy, very good, so they are what they are. Yeah. I have some of the TT Orc stuff, and it builds pretty quick. Yeah, it's some of it I think can build pretty quick. I've got no qualms with it myself. I think it's pretty decent for the price. I think the only reason you would do that over building it yourself is, one, the extra little details. Like, if you were trying to craft these windows, like these specific windows, it would be pretty hard to do. You could do like a basic shape, like I was talking to you, Matt, wasn't I, on Facebook? I was saying like maybe add like a cocktail stick between them. You could add like barbecue skewer. You could add a barbecue skewer in the middle, and then maybe have it stop there and leave the top open. But yeah, the detail's just too good. I don't really like the fact that it's got a line at the. Oh no, it's okay. I was going to say I don't like the top window versus the bottom window, but it's actually just because of the background. But my point being is that MDF kits are definitely a good alternative to buying a 3D printer. The only thing there is a 3D printer is obviously a lot more versatile. Like, you can buy the MDF kits, but if you change games or what have you, this is the ruined version of that. If you change games or what have you, you're stuck with the terrain you had, which is fine. If you're a die-hard 40k player, fine. But if you're a bit of a butterfly or whatever they call them, and you want to jump ship from game to game, then obviously you've got a bit of a thingy. So you've got you might want to build it yourself because it'll be cheaper. About these MDF kits, we have the I don't like to say that, Carway here, and they sell concrete spray paint finishes whatever you spray with rough texture with miniature concrete. I'm gonna let's look that up. Let's have a look what that is, because I quite like the idea of a concrete spray. This isn't the one that looks like stone, is it? The one that's sort of like gritty. No, I know it's not in English. Oh, this isn't a hobby shop. Yeah, we'll leave that as it is. But yeah, so when it comes to terrain, there's obviously many options, like you can get people to buy them, but I reckon you can probably put them in 3 main options. You can make it yourself. you can buy it, and that's probably either like 3D printed or MDF kits. We're all not happy. 3D printed or MDF kits, or you can buy a 3D printer and do it yourself. I think there are your 3 options, right? I don't think if anybody disagrees with me, but I reckon they're your 3 main options. Now, the one question I wonder is, it's a hardware store. I could tell that when I went on it. I was expected to be like a craft shop, and I was like, that is not a craft shop. So I'm not going to try and learn Dutch or whatever language it was in. Sorry. So there's one thing though. It's like, if you're going to craft, like, why do you craft? I was afraid it was okay. So I think some people probably enjoy the act of crafting itself. Some people, I'm late. I mean, I was on time. You're late, Steve. Some people enjoy the act of crafting, and for those people, I don't think it will ever go away. If you enjoy crafting and you want to learn how to do it and you want to build stuff yourself, there will always be a market for that. There's other people, which I would probably put myself into like many years ago, I was just doing terrain because I wanted the terrain. And for those people, the options now have like drastically expanded. You can now do those other things. You can buy MDF kits, you can buy it pre-printed and pre-painted, or you can buy a 3D printer and try and cut some of it out as well. What? I don't think even Virgin Media is even doing me over today. I don't think I have a problem with Virgin Media. I think Steve's the problem today. I'm trying to let's get this mic right close into my face. So yes, I bought this arm so that I could have that on a different arm. Most hardware stores have a spray paint at least texture. Yeah, you can get the ones. By the way, hi Daniel. You can get the ones that look like a grit. And I don't mind that, but I don't really like it on buildings and stuff like that, which is what people want to do with it. But one that sounded like concrete, that's got me interested. I enjoy building and convert things, just the painting. Well, I hate painting. So that's what I'm saying. Like I would probably put myself into that category of I'm just making terrain because I wanted the terrain, right? But if I really wanted the terrain, let me put it this way: like Luke Towan, the model railway guy. Yeah, I'll get him up on the screen so you all know what I'm talking about. He does incredible stuff. Now, some of it is cheap, like he'll use dirt, fine, but some of it not so cheap. Let's have a look at this. I mean, what is a classic one? His valley is quite classic. Let's see. Well, let's do it by thingy. Hi, Sean. Hi, IFD Hobby. I hope you're doing very well. Now you're here. I will try and get a link to your channel because now you can all see what I'm doing. I don't know why I've made this. Why is this happening to me? Because I'm in incognito mode. It doesn't. Honestly, YouTube is doing my nutting with this. I cannot find. Oh, okay. It would help if I spelled it correctly. YouTube is doing my nutting. You've done a video today which I haven't seen, so I do apologize. Now let me see if I can find the chat. Hey, look, don't blame me. Go and subscribe if you haven't already. Well, this is Willow again. Do apologize. Willow again. He did a really he did one of the ones I saw was like. Oh, I can't find it now. My point being, he also did a train one. He did like an underground railway. I can't find it for whatever reason. Anyway, for whatever reason, there we go. Don't sweat it. Well, I mean, my spelling's not the best. YouTube doesn't have predictive text. It doesn't. TT Combat any good for D&D? I think they do have some stuff for D&D. They've got quite a lot of stuff. Who cares about YouTube Premium? By the way, if you watch my videos with YouTube Premium, thank you. It gives me extra money. But other than that, I do apologise, John. My main point here with Luke, I don't mean this as an insult, but he's bought a kit there. That kit is probably 30 quid or something, right? And he's going to use do multiple different products, multiple different ways. Obviously, he's got the train track. This tree, to be fair, that's in his garden. But this actually doesn't look that expensive. But what I'm trying to say is, you can do really realistic stuff with expensive stuff. And if you're gonna spend a lot of money to craft, could you just buy a 3D printer and help that push you along? Zach is in the house, joined late today, work sucks. Oh god, I'm getting so fed up at work at the moment, I'm not gonna lie. Ain't that the truth? Hey, just so you know, I've been having a minor existential crisis about why anybody does anything, considering the ultimate heat death of the universe and the complete pointlessness of existence. Very nihilistic, but I'm just telling you, that's what I've been thinking about lately. So if you are a crafter, you can craft using expensive materials to get really realistic, good-looking results. That's one option. Or you can craft because you're on a budget and you want it for your game. And that's sort of where I'm at. Where's the fun in buying terrain? Yeah, I understand that, but you could you could almost argue that about like painting miniatures. People could sculpt miniatures if they really wanted to. So I think there's always going to be thank you, Zach. There's always going to be, honestly, it's so much in my head. I'm thinking about it all the time. There's always going to be some people who like crafting. It's completely not comforting. It's the opposite of comforting. It's like the most anxious thing in the history of the universe. So there'll be people who craft because they want to craft, right? There'll be people who craft because it's fun, like Jimmy. There'll be people who craft because they want it to be custom and stuff like that, as Zach's saying. And then there'll be people who craft because they need they want the cheapest terrain to enhance their games, right? I just want some cheap terrain and make my game look better. I'm spending shed ton of models or what have you, or I'm doing paper models or whatever it is. And so there's those two people. Like if the crafting is a hobby in itself, that's fine. And you have people where crafting is not a necessity, but just a means to an end. It's like we just want some terrain, and we either want it cheaply because I can't afford the rest of the stuff, or I don't have the other options. And if you're going to buy the terrain, well, the two main options right now are probably, mainly it's like Games Workshop stuff, which comes on Spruce, which I hate, or MDF kits. And then the third option is I'll buy myself a printer and print it, but that is not exactly cheap. So Daniel says FDM printers are great for establishing the shape of terrain, but then I always have to sand off the layers. So one of the reasons I sold my FDM printer was time, because how long it was taking to do the big builds, and quite frankly the lines were doing my nutting. Now there are ways of getting around that with different kinds of filaments and all that kind of stuff, but there you have it. Sculpting my own minis is fine for when I want an army of old shape bombs. Yeah, so I think that's also a fair point. Like the skill involved in making terrain is perhaps a little less than the skill involved in making, a human at 28mm scale. So I do agree with that. If you're using an FDM printer and you want to get rid of smooth layers, yeah. So that smooth on is basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically like a resin that. It's like a resin gloss, I guess. It's like a shiny liquid that will dry and harden, and it'll smooth over the lines. It sort of fills in the gaps and just smooths the whole thing. You might lose detail in some of the detail work, but then again, you could just not use it in the detail section. So I don't really have any experience with that, so Jay Young would be the best one to help you there. Any 3D terrain is better than the cardboard, chipboard, flat terrain that board games generally come with. Yeah, so I agree with that, Zach, and that sort of goes back to the means to an end people. If board games came with just incredible terrain, would people make their own for board games? Probably not. So yeah, it's a means to an end, and you've already spent 70 quid on a board game. Do you then really want to go make like buy 5 TT combat buildings for 100 quid? Probably not. It's a 2-pack casting resin, yeah. Use Curate with the UV right. Yeah, if you're going to do all that hassle to smooth prints, then you'll get good results, I'm pretty sure. Steve says, I built terrain because it looked fun to do rather than paint minis. Basically why I'm doing like a terrain channel instead of miniature channels, because I hate painting miniatures. But then I'm looking into getting others to paint for me, Osprey and Wash. When it comes to like miniatures, for sure. When it comes to terrain, I really want to, like on my videos, I really want to brush everything, but I can't be bothered. Sometimes when I've finished it, I'm just like, I'll spray it grey. I'll spray it a lighter grey. Just done. That gets to a point where I'm like, yeah, you could paint with this brush, but I'm not doing it. It takes too long. Having your own 3D printer is initially expensive, but it can quickly pay for itself. For sure, I think that's one of the things. Like, that's what I was saying about the TT combat buildings. You can buy a building for £10. We literally just saw that, right? You can buy a building that looks good for £10. Yeah, you've got to assemble it. Yeah, you've got to paint it. But, like, it looks really good. For like 10 quid, it looks fantastic, sure. The downside to that is if you then want different terrain, or you want a different theme of terrain, a different style of terrain, you then have to buy it again. And that's fine if money's not an object. But as you say, you might be better with a 3D printer and combining that with traditional effects and giving you that wide gambit of creativity than, say, locking yourself down into buying MDF kits or what have you. So there is that. Steve trying to find the what's it called? Like something momentum. What's it called? Like permanent energy machines, but that's not the right phrase. Ah, perpetual motion. A perpetual motion machine. Well, anyway, that doesn't exist. In terms of birthday presents, I have made myself the amount of money I've saved on a highly active Greedo killer. Han Solo? What are you talking about? What are MDF kits like painted? Let's have a look. So I have not got one because it's in the loft, so I don't know why I looked over there like I was going to be able to find it. But let's have a look at an MDF kit. Now, there are some MDF kits where you don't need to paint. A lot of people have been talking about the Wild West Exodus stuff. But let's have a look at like painted MDF TT combat building. They're okay. You can sort of tell that they're MDF kits, even so, because I remember I've been to events and we've used them and stuff like that. Luke's, this guy, I've never heard of him. Luke's APS. By the way, like, it needs an apostrophe. I don't know if you can do an apostrophe on like a YouTube name. Not 100% sure you can do that. I think if they're reasonably flat building, that's fine. But you know, these are MDF kits. This is very similar to the building that I actually just ruined myself, and not like a ruined building. I just destroyed it. Sorry, Sean, but I'm gonna take off your thingy there. The Han Solo blaster from okay. Foreground, yeah, foreground's very expensive. If I personally think, let's have a look at them. I didn't want to like mention them because they seem pretty expensive. 1 kilogram of filament yields about. Yeah, I mean, filament's really cheap, I think. Honestly, it's resin that's the problem. Could you choose similar quality? I think with XPS foam, you'll actually get better quality with XPS. So this is a personal preference, but I would rather have an XPS building than, say, an MDF building. But you will have to do the detail yourself. But it'll take, you know, MDF is very flat, basically. What generally happens is it's laser cut into it, and the detail is very shallow, unless you either get cut throughs or you get shallow detail. Printed cost is about 5p per tank. That's pretty good. Like, it's pretty decent printing it yourself. Games Company terrain is really expensive. Legion's bunker. Star Wars Legion terrain was, I mean, it's ridiculous, really, honestly. I'm of the opinion that XPS you get better quality. Yeah, I completely agree with Jay Young. Basically, because you can get. Let's put it one way. Let's have a look at this one building from foreground. Talking about expensive, you can buy this for, let's just say it's £143, so it's not cheap. This is not a cheap building, right? And it looks fantastic, right? It's very sturdy. It'll be sturdy once you've built that, and it'll be like it's all supported. But let's just have a quick look at this roof, right? Now the roof, I don't know if I can even show it. I can't show you very in great detail. But it's pretty flat, right? It's not particularly great. I'm zooming in as far as I can go. It's not a particularly great image. It's pretty flat. Now, you wouldn't obviously be able to do that with XPS foam, but if you maybe got like card and you did like snipped into the card and you had layers of card, you know, the card would look better. Now, you could try and combine the two. There'll be no texture on the sides of these buildings. There won't really be any texture. It won't look like stucco. It'll be pretty flat. Whereas, say on this wood, they may have done some texture on the wood. So, yeah, I suspect that would be textured, but there won't be, sorry, not textured. It's more likely to have like lines. The wood planks won't have like a grain on them. So, MDF kits are normally quite obviously MDF kits. How big is this building? The dimensions are approximately 30 centimeters by 25 centimeters. Why can I never find my ruler? I feel like I can never find my ruler. Put it where it belongs. I put it in its drawer. What a stupid idiot. For that much money, I would do 6 tables. Well, exactly. I mean, this is what I'm saying. So I do think foreground specifically are expensive, but the quality is quite good. So it's literally this big. Don't know what you're talking about. I intended to do that. It's a rule, not a ruler. What? It's a ruler. It's a ruler. Anyway, 30, what is this? 30 centimeters by, it's about that square basically, which is it's a big boy, but is it 150 quid's worth of big boyness? I would doubt it. What kind of tools are especially needed to get such high quality? Well, the problem with a building like this in XPS is you probably wouldn't use XPS for anything but, say, maybe the walls. Really, it looks more complicated. This is too big of a building to really talk about. Wire cuts are a hot blade. Yeah, a hot wire cut will do a lot. You can do a lot of stuff. But let's see if we can find like a smaller building. Let's just find. Can we do like a 28 mil? I want fantasy model kits. I just want one that's like this but not as big as this. Add-ons? Don't know. Basically what I was going to say is essentially not all of that building would be wise to make it out of XPS foam. In fact, you could just use foam board because the detailing you could do in other ways. For example, the little wood slats you could do, say, I mean, fair enough, you could engrave the XPS foam for like the floors, for the wood grain and stuff like that. I would recommend Blackmagic Crafts like tavern builds and stuff like that, and maybe like that kind of stuff. Now, it's something that I probably will get into, but I haven't done yet. Has the internet died? Am I even still on? Because this website ain't loading, I'll tell you that. This is an example of like an MDF kit. You can see, it paints up fine, but the like details, it's generally, they're not textured. It's just little like mildly cut in detail. They're quite good if you wash them, incidentally, because it gets in the recesses and stuff like that. You've got a couple of 3D vehicles. Any ideas on the easiest way to clean off the lines? I mean, you can't clean off the lines really, unless you're going to try and use like, there's something like ammonia. There's something that like will melt the plastic and try and smooth everything, but I don't really recommend that. And I don't even think it's FDM. I think that has to be, I don't think that's PLA. I think that has to be the other one. The name's escaping me. But the difference between Canada over here and you when it comes to material. Yeah, no, I agree. I do understand that, Matt. I will try and do more D&D stuff, but I really wanted to try and explain how some of this might actually be made. Now, it's pretty impressive that the building itself is not straight, the fact that it's like slanted. But the reality is, like, if you did that as XPS foam, you literally could do, do it as XPS, draw in the lines with a pen, or a mechanical pencil's pretty good. I know FD swears by that. And get like a cheap wire brush, and just do some lines across it. That'll get you a really nice texture. And then for the wood the wood slits and stuff like that, these bits here, you could use, like, people always talk about craft sticks, right? I hate craft sticks. They're almost impossible to cut. They just do my head in. I don't know if there's some country where craft sticks just break easily, but I'll tell you what, in the UK, you can't cut them. They're solid. So I would maybe look at balsa wood. Balsa wood's not that expensive, but it is obviously pretty brittle. But yeah, so you could do that with like just like a sheet of XPS foam, with balsa wood for the wood. I think you can actually carve in. You could probably take a wire brush to the balsa wood. I think that'll give it texture. You could, if you had a hot wire cutter, you could really shave down some foam and then texture that up. I think it would look a bit weird and probably wouldn't do that, but ABS plastic is what I wanted. Thank you. I still wouldn't do it though because it's a big massive faff. Thank you very much, Matt. So yeah, like here, this roof is actually better than the previous roof. I don't know how or why, but this roof actually seems to have actual detail on it. But this is definitely doable. To be fair, this is doable without XPS foam. You could make that side of that wall maybe do the craft sticks if you can actually cut the bloody craft sticks, and then sort of create like a stucco texture using like polyfiller or stucco or whatever it is. I wouldn't. Shingles are not. I mean, I'm never really getting into the shingle world because I can't be bothered with that. If I was ever going to do shingles, how would I do them? I'd probably do like a couple of layers of card and just snip out the triangles and then put the card over the other ones. Would I be bothered doing the whole thing? Oh, I don't know. It'd be an absolute pain in the backside. You cut sticks with your clippers. Yeah, like you can do it. I don't have any craft sticks to hand. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just really don't enjoy the experience. I find it difficult, and they're prone to disintegrating. And I also think that craft sticks, let's say you've got a craft stick that's 1 centimeter wide, but you actually want it to be 0.75 millimeters wide. It's very it's very difficult to cut that. Garden shears garden shears. Yeah, I mean, it's a faff. I think I might just use balsa wood. I think I just prefer balsa wood. It's just easy. Steve says, no worries, sandpaper gets you there eventually. The thick primer gets you there cheaper, but the resin coating gets you there now. It's $20 a bottle. So one thing that I, depending on what kind of building it is, Steve, when I was doing my Legion buildings, I got some compliments on the smoothness, and all I did was I'd sand it very briefly in the like flat areas, and then I just used filler. I got some literal filler, watered it down, smoothed it as much as I could, filled in the gaps on the flat areas, especially when it's detailed. I don't really do it, and then after the filler had dried, I would then back in with the sandpaper to get rid, because obviously filler sometimes I wouldn't get it perfect, and that would look really smooth. Also, if you are going to paint a 3D printed something, I recommend not using a wash, and I recommend, if at all possible, using sprays or airbrushes. You don't want to go in there and dry brush it or anything like that, because it will highlight the problems. So like for my buildings, I would spray them like black at the bottom, then I'd spray them grey, and then I'd spray like a little bit of white on top or whatever, and I'd have like a nice grey building, and then just do the details. So there are ways of making 3D printed stuff look better. I'm not sure a rotary blade would necessarily come in there. Your craft knife works on craft sticks. Whatever. I just don't enjoy it. Like I feel like if I had a centimeter craft stick and I wanted to get it to 0.75 of a centimeter, it would shatter and I would have some problems, and that's frustrating to me. So I'll tell you what would be difficult to do without XPS foam. The stones at the bottom here would probably be difficult, but I suspect XPS would look better because you'd be able to texture the stones and you'd be able to have different depths to them and stuff like that. So you'd have like a stone that's popped in or out, and obviously this is pre-painted. If you're going to paint it yourself, you could do them in slightly different colours and then give them a wash and all kinds of stuff. So there you go. Melting PLA is really easy. Oh, there you go. So melted bits are I don't know why you guys are melting your PLA, but there you go. Hi Mia, how are you doing? All right today? How are you? I really need to start with that. I don't know what's better. Hi Mia, how are you today? Or hi Mia, I hope you're well. How are you? It's like I'm sort of presuming. I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like they go together. And if I just said hi Mia, hope you're well, then I'm not really asking you a question. So there we go. I'm very well, thank you. I managed to get my hands on 14 large sheets of XPS. Oh, that's pretty good. When you say large sheets, Matt, what kind are you thinking? And how thick, if you don't mind? How thick and how big? Height, broad, width, whatever. It's cool under the vehicle where the flaps are. Steve just taking a thingy to it. This is Wilkinson's pots of paint, by the way. It's what I often use. But this is what I talk like MDF kit here. I presume this is an MDF kit. And you can see it's got good detail on some of this, especially like it looks damaged, and it doesn't. This one doesn't obviously look like a 3D printed kit, an MDF kit to me. So this that I really enjoyed the look of that one. It looks like they've textured this, if I'm honest. I think they've textured this themselves, one way or another. So let's find out how they've done this. I don't believe that's okay. Is this part 2? Because this is textured. Oh, how old is your child, Steve? Yeah, so Sean lives. I always want to say New Zealand. I think it's just Australia and I keep making that mistake. Either way, for Sean, it's like first thing in the morning. That's IFD hobby. I'm not happy with this because this looks like it's they've textured this somehow. There are little bits of texture now. That's either like a thick paint, or they textured it beforehand. I'm not particularly happy with this as a blog post because it doesn't really explain what I'm looking for there. But normally that would be completely flat, and that would be the problem. Not a huge problem. 5 and 10. Fair enough. It's 4 a.m. What are you doing? What are you doing? Go to bed. 30mm thick and 2. So yeah, that's about Matt. That's about what I get. So you see, you got 4 sheets of that. 14, like 14. What? You got 14 XPS sheets. 14 XPS sheets at 30mm that are basically 4 foot by 2 foot for €30. That's much better than what I get. I would maybe get 3 sheets for that, maybe 2.5. So yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, normal people would be asleep at this point. Was it? Yeah, it could have been texture paint for sure. So this is just highlighting MDF kits. You generally want to spray an MDF kit because it soaks up paint. So if you just try and do it with your brush, you'll have an absolute nightmare. And also, you generally want the layers to be a bit thin because it'll block up the detail very nicely. These kits actually look pretty good because they've got like texture. The reason you don't see texture all over an MDF board generally is because it would take forever. The machine would take longer to do it because it's sort of taking away material. A 3D printer is sort of like, it doesn't matter if you're going to do texture or not in general because it's all just like layers. So yeah, that's interesting. 14 at the budget insulation store. The budget insulation store. Insulation store. I'm curious how much delivery would be. 40. I would get maybe 3 sheets for that same price. That is good. Okay. I get probably insulation and then insulation. I think this is not how you spell this. Sorry. Maybe it is insulation. I mean, should I put like Dutch? You get 14 foot by 6 foot by 3. Wait, 3 inch. Oh, 3 inch. You need a hot wire cutter. You've got that full. Means being insulation, isolation. Yes, so you go. Is that's very interesting. Additive versus subtractive manufacturing. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like a 3D printer, you're only ever adding what you need. So adding detail pretty much takes just as long as adding a flat piece. Whereas for an MDF kit, you're doing the opposite. You've got a flat piece of wood that you're then carving into, which is a little bit more like what you do with XPS foam. It's just easier to do with XPS foam because the material is so much softer. Hi, Dakafaka Flame. Hi, Tyler. I hope you're very well. Are you very well today? I hope so. Yeah. It's fine. I can't speak a word of any other language. Well, apart from swear words in some, but I can't speak actual other languages. So there we go. Yeah. Oh, I'm really happy you found it for so cheap. I'm curious if you can get any thinner than that. I really like it. I really like 1 centimeter thick. 30 centimeter thick's a very nice number for like buildings and other kinds of detail stuff like my Necron stuff and that kind of stuff. So yeah, like I'm really happy you found some. It'd be cool if you could find different thicknesses because it's always nice to have. Or you can have a hot wire cutter, but hot wire cutters are a bit expensive, especially the Proxon. The Proxon. Something has been eating my... This was not a sentence I expected to read. It really caught me off guard. Something has been eating my ducks, so I'm going to have to butcher them early. Of course. Fair enough. I don't know why, but it made me very hungry. I'm going to have some Jaffa cakes later. I can get thinner, but for some reason it's more expensive. Yeah, I don't know. The thinner stuff, generally, if you look for underfloor isolation, you may get a bit lucky. But I mean, because that's one thing you can't really sensibly do. You can't really turn a 30mm thick piece of foam into a 1 centimeter thick bit that's quite long, like large, because I mean it's too difficult to do that cut. So yeah, I'm sorry something's eating your ducks other than you. Yes indeed. I mean, they're obviously tasty depending. So we've not really spoken about like actual 3D printers, right? How much is the Anycubic? No, is Photon S the new one? Is this the upgraded one? You can't see because of my big fat head. Is the Anycubic S the upgraded one that's like not as loud, better smelling, and all that kind of stuff? Oh, am I wrong? There's like a pro version of it. And if I'm honest, if that would have been available when I was looking back when I was looking, I probably would have bought it. And then there is the Elegoo Mars, which I'm not trying to look at Barbara Hepworth, but thank you. It is the newer one, okay. Amazon. Elegoo. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. Accept the cookies. I'm in incognito mode, so get lost. So yeah, I mean, 190 quid. It's weirdly expensive if you're just going to print like Aquilas and doors. It's pretty expensive, right? But if you're going to print like miniatures and that kind of stuff, it's actually pretty decent. Mars Plus. What's the Mars Plus? What's the Mars Plus? Mars Pro? Because you've nailed that, Darren. To be fair, I don't know the difference. Let's have a look at the difference. Built-in activated carbon. Don't know what that means. I honestly can't tell the difference. Ducks are legendary monsters. Need to order a duck takeaway tomorrow. I had Chinese yesterday. Is it yesterday? What day is it? No, I had Chinese on... Was it yesterday? I feel like it was Sunday. Either way, it was delicious. Although, like, we ordered essentially portions for one. We ordered, like, fried rice and some chips for me. And we were going to share everything. And it was absolutely massive. I don't know who they think they're serving. Giants, I think. If you're going to go down the 3D printer route, I recommend getting a 3D pen. Why would you recommend? Why, Jimmy? I've never actually seen anybody recommend the pens. Normally people say the pens are just a bit meh. But there you have it. Most of the same differences between the phone. Oh, right. Which are what? Wait. Ooh, this one says higher precision. Higher precision, guys. I like how it's in stock. Delivery the 29th of August. Is that if you've got Prime? Mate, I've got Prime. I'm not in my account either, to be fair. Most of the... So, I use my 3D pen as a welder for parts. I've got a pen and not used it yet. Calm, what's the cheapest you can get a decent printer? So, Calm, that really depends on the kind of printer you want and what you want to do with it. If you're looking for the cheapest to make like buildings, an FDM printer is probably the best printer. If you're looking for printers to print like little bits, like greebles, like fans and stuff like that, then you probably want something like an Elegoo or something like that, if you're talking cheap. And also, it depends on the currency you are, but it depends what you want, Callum. What are you after printing? If you tell us that, we probably can offer, the people in the chat can probably offer some some good advice. I'm not sure what a good FDM printer is now. There have been improvements on FDM. By the way, so when I'm talking about FDM, just in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, a resin printer works like this picture. There's a vat of resin here, and the build plate goes into the resin. The light sort of tells the resin to cure in certain areas, and it sort of like builds up, right? And it's great for small pieces because resin's expensive. There's only the odd one where it's going to have a big area that you can build. An FDM printer, I don't know what I'm not 100% sure what it stands for. It's basically like melted plastic that has like a base, and it goes around melting the plastic onto a base, and it just keeps sort of like building it up. Now the quality of the resin printers are generally better. For whatever reason, you generally don't see the lines as much, but to print your own minis, if you're in the UK, the Elegoo Mars will do you, honestly. The resin printers, in 200 quid, I'm not 100% sure about the US, the Anycubic Photon, or the Anycubic Photon S, if you want minis, you don't want an FDM printer because they're difficult. You definitely want a resin printer, and if you want minis, any resin printer will be fine, pretty much. The Elegoo Mars, the Elegoo Mars has people like that. There's a decent subreddit for it, and the Anycubic Photon are basically like the poster children of the cheap resin 3D printers. And if I'm honest, they're probably the ones that I'm looking at. It's tempting for me to take the plunge on this printer that we're looking right in front of us. So there is that. 3D printers are so amazing to me, and I just want to talk about, if I do buy a 3D printer, then it'll be videos where you would need to have a 3D printer. Like I wouldn't do one where I mix the two. So what I'm saying there is, let's say like I can't think of anything. I wouldn't add the greebles onto the terrain that I build for the video because I think it'd be like sort of cheating. So there we have that. What's the biggest printed terrain model you've made? Me, Steve. The biggest one I made was probably one of the Imperial Terrain Legion buildings. And it's only like 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, but it took, I think the lid took like, well, you can actually print them together, but basically it takes about 15 hours. And I was like, nah, just for one building, I'm not doing that. Wargaming Dad says, depends on the scale of the models. At smaller scales, the lines aren't noticeable when using an FDM printer. It sort of makes sense, but the resin ones are just so good for that. If you want minis, I would recommend a resin printer, and the reason you can't see the lasers, they are 10 times smaller than on the resin printer, than on the other printers on average, basically. I've seen some amazing quality prints off FDMs that surprised me. Yeah, to be fair, that guy I was talking about at my work, well, I've not seen him in ages because of coronavirus, but he got some really, really nice effects. Some really good minis from that, but I just think like if you want it for minis and you've not already got an FDM printer, you might as well get the resin printer. I'm not sure I would upgrade from a resin printer from an FDM printer to a resin printer if you've got one, but because you can just sort of like lower the speeds and stuff like that. There are certain things you can do to try and help the quality. The biggest thing I've made is an exhaust couple for laser cutter, 18 inches, 15 inches long. Mental. Callum says, can you use a 3D printer to print GW minis? Legally, no, but yes. As Jay Young says, you wouldn't. So, right, that is a whole conversation in itself, because I did start saving my scrap mat, but then I realised that it was actually just getting in my way and I never bothered. So that is a whole legal quandary that we sort of touched upon briefly. You shouldn't really like print some Games Workshop models and go into a Games Workshop store, or even go to a Games Workshop tournament. And some people do sort of like inspired by models. So instead of a Space Marine, you'll see a Star Marine who's maybe got slightly different armor, and in which case they are completely fine to print. Legally, I don't think Games Workshop has any leg to stand on. And I think this is the whole thing going forward, where copyright and design's a little bit tricky. So the concept of a soldier in space with big armor isn't trademarkable, copyrightable, or anything like that. You can't protect the concept. What you can protect is the actual physical designs. You can't replicate the design 100% technically. Now, if you replicated the design 100% and posted it online as Star Soldier, I honestly don't know what the legal... I think we would have to see a legal fight. But I think try and not be crappy about it, I guess. If you're just playing with your friends and you're not really that bothered, and maybe you wouldn't have bought them anyway. Personally, I don't see any problems with that. But it's a whole like quagmire of giggity. It's a whole quagmire of moral and legal issues, I think. So there's that space elves exactly. Instead of Eldar, you'd have space elves. So, but I'm strongly indifferent on it. I don't really know whether. Well, weirdly, I think the law is almost too lax in that. But then, how can you can't have the idea of a space elf? You can't copyright that as an idea. You can't own that. It's too generic. So I don't know. Games companies are going to have to try and stop people from just 3D printing their army and rocking up to events. Yeah. So I mean, Callum, that makes sense. People go to like. Chinese recasters and that kind of stuff. Matt, that's my build video from today. They're trying to use some of my holiday scraps. What scrap form? I use every bit. Oh God, I do not use every bit. I literally, every time I do a build, I have a bin bag in my room just to get rid of the stuff very easily because it bugs me. But yeah, as Darren says, Wargaming Dad says, there are some straight up copies. If you want heads and shields, you'll find them. People have made them. This is not legal advice, but it's only illegal if you get caught. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. Please speak to your lawyer. Obviously, that's what everybody says. But yeah, that's going to get more and more interesting, I think. And I think Games Workshop, as I said, I think they're inadvertently planning for it by selling a shed ton of rules. Like, I think their methodology is that if they just sell rules, that's how they may have to get by, because they know the demand for the models might decline. Now, I've read their financials. They don't talk about an incoming threat from 3D printed models, so they're not worried about it right now. But I think inevitably that's going to get stronger as an issue. I think for Games Workshop, their main worry is the fact that they don't host their own tournaments that much. Whereas for like Star Wars Legion, the stores are hosting the tournaments, and the stores obviously want you to have bought their stuff because you're probably going to buy them from stores. So they're not going to be happy with you 3D printing the stuff. So it only really, I think, it will become an issue for people who play like beer and pretzel games and hobbyists, which is a lot of Games Workshop markets. If you're just printing it for yourself, who cares? Like, you know, who's only games like this Games Workshop are just going to lose out. That's it, basically. Yeah. So look, I'll pay 100 or even $200 for a comics. Yeah. I mean, I do think eventually they'll have to sell the 3D printable files. I agree with that. I think that's also a possible inevitability. I'm strongly in favour of giving money to the companies who make cool stuff, including GW. But everyone borrows heavily from others in creating their stuff, and I find out, yeah, there's such a quagmire of stuff. There was a guy in one of my comments I was having a bit of an argument with, and he was trying to tell me that I should have credited the idea of the fuel silos. And I was like, one, like, you really can't trademark the idea. What you can copyright and trademark and all this kind of stuff is the actual design. So like, let's say Games Workshop put it in a book. If I literally took their exact measurements and I took a screenshot of it and I made that exact thing, then yes, you could argue that that was wrong. But I like created it myself. I'm legally entitled to do that. Morally, should I have? He had a problem because he was saying I should have cited my sources. But the problem I had with that was it's such an old, like, classic thing that who knows who first did it? Like, who's the first person who made a Warhammer, Wargaming Hill out of foam? Who's the first person who did rocks on a train set using the Woodland Scenics mold? Well, I don't know. It is what it is, isn't it? So there's a lot of stuff like complicated issues. But morally, I think like if you're going to go into stores and try and play games in stores, then you almost certainly should buy the miniatures. Like otherwise, the store isn't going to exist, right? And I only sort of encourage it if I say I don't even encourage it, but I only sort of understand it if you're going to play at home and you don't have the money anymore, but you did have a printer for whatever reason, or you're a hobbyist and you just want to print and paint different stuff. Or this time I'll print one Space Marine. Maybe, I don't know. It's an interesting issue. So resin printers. Wait. You can see a 3D printer in every GW store. That would be mental, wouldn't it? If they were like, that's an interesting thing. In that, in theory, you could cut down the cost of transport if you just transported resin. So Steve says, wait. So resin printers, where do you get yours, and which brand spool system do you advise to pick up? So if we're talking a resin printer, I think like you can buy the branded stuff that they make. So for example, this Elegoo Mars, they have their own branded resin. Now you don't need to use that, but I don't know. Yeah, and it's pretty expensive. Like a spool of filament is probably like 15 quid maybe, whereas this stuff's like 30 quid. So it is pretty expensive. And you know, some of them are translucent and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So Dad, I walked into my local game store and the guy behind the counter was frantically trying to fix the 3D printer. I got to ask him, can I help you? Yeah, so even game stores are going to have 3D printers. And they'll probably, like, the only thing I think we can all guarantee that nobody has any, like, claim over is terrain, right? Nobody owns anything in terrain. It's almost all free, you know, because you're literally just replicating life. You're not... Games Workshop are trying to change that with, like, the Space Marine bunker and stuff like that, but really... nobody's going to mind if a game store has a big ass Elegoo Saturn and is doing buildings and stuff like that. So there is that. The Elegoo Mars and the Anycubic Photon are the go-to entry machines available online at the usual places. I enjoy that. It sort of sounds like a disclaimer. The go-to entry machines available online at the usual places, and it's not spools but bottles of toxic liquid. Yes, do be careful. They say wear gloves. They say wear eye protection, because, you know, you don't want resin getting in them eyes or on your body. And it also, so for those of you who don't know, for those of you who don't know, a resin printer, once you've printed it, it actually, it'll have like liquid on it and it's not necessarily fully cure. So you generally, it cures by UV light, so from the sun. Now sure, if you live in a sunny country, which Steve doesn't because he lives in Scotland, so he never actually sees the sun. Literally unknown thing, when they do see it, they're like, oh, what's that? You can leave it outside, or you can buy like nail curers. I think is generally what they're for. Generally the cheapest way to get them. It's like women would put their hands in and their nails would cure. I'm not like, it's I want to say acrylic. It's not acrylic. Yeah, maybe acrylic. I don't know. They do stuff with nails, so there's an easy way of getting that. So is it just me, or do some builds look nice in the dark and some? I think probably two is. I agree with that. I think it depends on the. I think that depends on the paint job, because it's like a miniature. Some people, when they do non-metallic metal, so they try and actually say where the light would come from, it's designed to look good from certain areas generally. And terrain, it could be the same. Like if I paint it like it's in daytime, then that could make sense. What song? I'm not sure we're going to do a song tonight, Steve, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Do you end up saving if you buy a resin printer, or will you end up spending more money on? Callum, that's such a sort of an impossible question to answer, I think. Although Jay Young straight in there, will you save money? It depends on what you would buy otherwise. Like, if you're going to go to, like, if you're playing D&D, you're doing Hero Forge stuff, you're almost certainly going to save money, right? Because obviously it depends how many miniatures you print. If you buy a machine and you print one miniature, you'll lose money. If you keep if you keep printing minis, then you'll make your money back up. If you're saying like, I'm not going to pay for a Games Workshop army, like I'm going to print it instead, you would save money, but morally you probably shouldn't do that. So it really depends on what you want to do and how you do it, I think. I would expect that it depends on the size. Yeah, it literally depends on what you want to print and how often you want to print it. Now, you did say Hero Forge minis. I suspect D&D miniatures are probably relatively... It's pretty windy outside, guys. I suspect D&D miniatures, like the one we've seen on screen here, are probably readily available. So I suspect if you're going to print like 50 of them, you'd easily save money. And I think my wife may have texted me. No, it's actually my mother. She wants to see Willow. Not sure we can abide that in these lockdown conditions. I don't know what I've been texted here by Katie. Me and Jason have decided less takeaway and more donuts. Apparently we said that in 2018. We've not been following that advice. So yeah, I do think like if you're doing like D&D miniatures, I think it's actually a really good thing. If you're doing I mainly talk about terrain on this channel rather than the actual miniatures. It's sort of terrain for wargaming rather than say D&D even. So I'm not really. I do have friends who play D&D. They look good, but I'm not sure if I would get enough use to make your money back. Callum, I've been in that boat, and I'm sort of in the same boat for a different reason. Mainly mine's terrain, and I would recommend not buying one. There's no rush. I think myself and a lot of people fall into this category of you want stuff now because you want to play with it and stuff like that. You don't need it. I would maybe try and maybe even write down the list of things you want to print. Maybe go off. Not right now, stay to the end of the stream because obviously it's a fantastic stream and we're having a great time. But maybe go off and look what you would print. Look versus how much you would spend maybe in 6 months versus what you would spend now. Now obviously you can't know, let's say you play D&D, you don't know that you want a dwarf or whatever this guy is. But maybe in the last 6 months how many miniatures did you want? Okay, I wanted that. How many shields would I have got? Okay, well, there's no other way of getting the Forge World stuff without buying it, so you can then track it. I'm a bit of a spreadsheet nerd. I would maybe make a little spreadsheet. Don't rush into this. Take your time. And just say, like, how much would I have spent? Or how much did I even spend? Versus how much will I spend? Depending where you're from, Burster is saying, I've seen an Anycubic on sale for like 165. Yeah, like once you, if you're going down to that price, like 165, I presume dollars, it does get a bit more like impulse buy. But yeah, if you can find something like a makerspace that you try before you buy. A lot of makerspaces, they had FDM printers, not the resin printers, but maybe you can find one that does have one for you. I've decided until wait 3D printers are totally true. Yeah. So I think Daka Flacker Flame, Tyler, I would do that if I didn't have the terrain channel. If I was left to my own devices, I can envision a world where instead of having like a bottle of resin, what you actually would get would be like a 3D printer, an ink cartridge, and maybe you just plug that in and then it drains out and then it drains back in or whatever. Well, wouldn't be able to drain back in, but you know what I mean, like it gets pumped in and then once it's finished it gets pumped out, and maybe the resin is actually pretty covered, maybe the whole thing is covered and sealed. So I think they'll get to a point where they're actually like they're not dangerous, but they'll get to a point where there's no risk, it's easy, it's consumer friendly, and it will happen. Steve says you could ask your local groups if anybody has one to get a couple of things done for you, like the custom materials. Yeah, for sure. Asking about if you know anybody who's got one, you could try and get a model and stuff like that. But I always try and do like cost benefits. Whenever I do anything, I'm a little bit obsessed with cost benefits. How much would I have paid for this? How much did I pay if I buy this? How much have I paid in the last 6 months? What am I likely to print? Like, I didn't let myself buy the FDM printer until I had a list of 5 things that I was going to print. And then once I printed them, I sold it. To be fair, I didn't even lose that much money. Keep in mind, if let's say you buy it, and you don't use it for 3 months, sell it. You won't make all your money back, but you make some of it back. Yeah. Deca Fucker Flame, my best guess is less than 5 years out. Yeah, no, I honestly think that the next leap in resin 3D printers is probably something like that makes it super easy. Like that cartridge ID that I was just saying. And I think, we're going to have larger print beds, then it's going to be easier to do, and then I think probably they need to work on the cost of resin. Resin is too expensive for what it is, but resin has always been expensive, so is that even possible? Maybe they'll come up with an idea that's cheap. Imagine you have something that's like a really cheap resin with a really cheap printer with a large print bed. It's game over then, guys. Do you know what I mean? Or you just paint. My problem is that I don't want to pay a Kindy for some GW terrain, and I enjoy painting single miniatures, which is how I think printers would be great at. If you're doing a resin printer, if you enjoy painting, then I wouldn't buy an FDM printer for terrain or anything like that. I would stick with a resin printer for sure. I think the quality of them, if it's just you'll actually enjoy it on a resin printer, whereas for an FDM printer, it's more like a means to an end. It's not as simple as that. If you're just enjoying painting and you want to paint like D&D specific Hero Forge miniatures and stuff like that, Hero Forge is an interesting one because there's different pay brackets that you can get it, so they print it for you versus what you get if you just get the STL file. So maybe just try and work out how many miniatures you actually want and just titulate it up, calculate it up. I think it's also fair to mention that it requires some time investment. Yeah, I agree with Carlos though. Carlos Beltran, is that a baseball player? I think so. Maybe Boston Red Sox. Beltran, what? Red Sox? Used to be. Don't know. Don't quote me on that. I am an Englishman after all. So I agree. Especially I had an FDM printer, and it would have been, if it would have had a self-leveling bed, the user experience would have been much, much better. But it didn't. So the user experience was a pain in my backside, and I didn't really like it. But for the resin printers, yeah, there is a bit of an investment, as in you've got to pour your resin in using a filter, then you've got to get the resin back into the bottle using a filter. So there you go. 4K, I'm scared of I have over 20. Oh, Steve's trying to get you to paint his miniatures. And mine, don't forget me. So it's very hard to have successful prints immediately. We should be willing to accept failure. For sure, I agree with that. Generally, it's not one failed print isn't that expensive, really. Massive buildings and stuff like that in terms of resin would be. And it used to be an MLB player. See that? I'm a pro. I know the baseballs. You don't believe there are non-toxic resins? Yeah, somebody said, Darren said there was water-based. There are plant-based resins that are still advertised as less toxic. For getting no. I'm not doing it. I'll take it. I'm desperate to anybody paint my miniatures. Carlos Belton, if you have access to a mentor teacher, you probably get up and running in a few hours or days, but I agree with that. Mentor, expect weeks. Yeah, I've got to say, the FDM printer that I had didn't take me long to get it started. It wasn't that bad once you leveled the bed, but then I'd sort of researched a lot of it as well, to be fair. It depends on the size of the model. I reckon probably one miniature in terms of resin. $2 maybe. Jay Young will be the best person to answer that. Let's say you were printing a Space Marine sort of size miniature. Yeah, so let's estimate it as a Space Marine. How much in terms of dollars would you reckon that would be in the resin? And let's say you get most of it back in the bottle. I reckon it would be. How many Space Marines could you print out of a big bottle of resin for stuff like that? I base coated, washed and based 2K of Lord of the Ring miniatures it already. Hot damn. Hot damn. Speaking of hot and damn, it is quite hot in here. Let's have a look what somebody's saying. I've seen a message on a different screen that hasn't come up yet. I make windows for 0.2 cents a piece. Something like a Space Marine is like 30-60 cents. Yeah, okay. $1. I was overestimating it then. They're like $2. Yeah, so one miniature in terms of material, fine. You probably get, like, let's say out of that bottle of resin that we were looking at, which was like 100 grams, going off that like price calculation, you'd probably get like 60 miniatures from it, maybe more then. And you know, that's good. That means you're saving £18-ish a minute. Oh, so you're in the UK, Callum? I was wondering that. I was wondering if you were in the UK. Keep in mind that obviously the resin may be slightly more expensive or cheaper in the US. For example, J Young, how much is say like this the resin from Ellie Goo, for example? I mean, they actually, you can see they've got different quality price and qualities themselves. That's 36 quid, that's £32. Are they all like that? Oh, this is number wait, the green is #1 bestseller. Ooh. Oh no, there's different colours. Yeah. The difference is very mild, so it's still like 50p in the UK. It's not going to be a massive difference. Will you buy a $200 to $1,000 machine before you print any 47 minutes? Yes. So, for example, the Ellie Goo Mars here, or the Pro version, is $190. Plus, you get a sample bit of resin in there. So, but let's call it it's either like £210 or £250 pounds. But yeah. The basic Ellie Goo resin is $25-30 depending. Oh, so it's pretty similar, so probably the same kind of pricing. It is what it is, isn't it? It is what it is, and what it is what it is. So yes. So I've not really spoke about me personally in terms of what I'm thinking. Obviously we spoke a little. Oh, that's not what I was trying to press. Oh, I've pressed the wrong thing. Oh, okay, it's fine. Oh, that's not what I was trying to press. That is the thing I wasn't trying to press. So for me personally, I have my constant dilemma of, oh look, I can sit back with the mic. No, Steve, no, that's not what I was doing. Oh, this is comfy, you know. Oh, yeah, guys. So can't see the screen because I'm blind. No, I think Steve was just taking the mic because I accidentally put the thanks for watching screen on the end. I really like this. It's actually quite comfy. It's not over till the fat man sings. For me personally, I obviously have that classic dilemma of terrain. When we're talking about who makes terrain, people who do it for fun versus people who have a necessity for it. My sort of target demographic is essentially the demographic of the people who, and I know it's not necessarily for everybody, because some people will, there's the stuff. I look like a radio host. Well, thanks. Coming up, guys, on the Radio FM, we've got Steve Bonner and a fat man to play us out. I'm generally, at the minute, targeting the audience of people who just want the terrain sort of cheaply and easily, rather than say people who even enjoy terrain. Because if you enjoy it as a hobby, you're more likely to be happy to spend money on materials and stuff like that. Whereas I'm like right there at the let's just get this done quickly, cheaply, easily. Now, so I'm sort of for people who want terrain but who don't want all the time or the cost. I can't tell if I build terrain for fun or because when I start I can't stop. Yeah. And I mean, some of my videos are good for both, I would guess. Some of them are maybe cheap but easy, and maybe cheap but good results and stuff like that. I could fit into both those roles. Duck rolls, duck rolls. Yeah, and I think I could fit into both of them. I enjoy the results of the terrain, but I think sometimes you just want something quick as well. Like I'm compulsive. I have 5 to 7 full Crisis Protocol tables built. Wow, that is quite a lot of Crisis Protocol tables built. So I mean, I have that classic dilemma as well, though. So adding a 3D printer takes me away from the people who are doing it for like necessity, and I don't have no quite like that is my audience. So like I'm not trying to slag that audience off a little bit. Why did the music stop, by the way, and when? Oh, I was in between songs. That's why. A 3D printer sort of fits. It takes you out of that one bucket and puts you into the people who enjoy making terrain. But it's the people who enjoy making terrain who aren't that bothered about money because you've bought a 3D printer. And it also takes you away from the people who are just wanting the terrain because really you would just print all of the terrain. So, both roles I meant Fat Man singing and the guest on here. Fat Man singing, no, that's me. Andy, you've got a tournament all of your own there. Burst, I find your name very hard to say. I want to say Buster, I do apologise. A big question for you all. Should I use plywood or MDF for a tabletop I plan to build? Whichever you find the easiest to cut. If you're going to have like, a lot of people will use stuff like 1 centimetre or 10 mil MDF. If you've got like a, what they call, like a table saw, then either's going to be fine. I'd say MDF personally, but they're both going to be fine if you can get a suitable thickness. I'm hoping to host something at my local game store if we ever get allowed to go into game stores again. Yeah, well, FFG were like, yeah, we're not actually doing our organised play, so there's that. That's it. I'm gonna go. A bit of a shorter one today. I've only done an hour and 42 minutes. Bit of a shorter one, but I'm going to, and you can't necessarily. If anybody, I'm going to turn off the camera, and I'm going to go on a different channel. If you want to come and watch me play New World, that's what I'm actually going to go and do. So I mean, feel free to come over there. MDF is less likely to warp, but it's heavier and a little harder to work with. It's hard to find MDF near me. It's more expensive. And Steve says, you guys, how are you? Storing terrain's a whole different subject. I'm storing it in the loft and hoping Katie doesn't see it. Or storing it in one of my shelves. I find it very difficult. Somebody said in one of my videos that they were happy to see me use some of my old terrain, and that's just because I hadn't put it in the loft yet. Once it goes in the loft, I ain't gonna go down and get it and put it in one of the end of my videos. But that was interesting discovery there about the MDF and plywood. I actually don't have much experience with either, but if they're thick enough, they're both going to be fine. So this is where I'm going. I'm going to stream to that. I'm keeping it in big bins in the toy shelves in the kids' toy closet. Whatever works. Mine's just in lofts in big bins. Not very well. So does that... don't know if that link actually works. Let's see if that link actually works. I'm literally going to... No, that link did not work. That link did not... Does that link work? Oh. No. That link does not work. Okay. Bear with me, guys. That link does not work. Why does that link not work? Don't worry, the other stream is nonsense, don't worry about that. It would be nice though if the other stream, like worked. That would be nice. It sort of worked? I don't know, it sort of worked this time. I don't know, mine isn't built yet. A gaming chair camera, there we go. I don't know if that link's going to work either. It keeps trying to... It's not working for me, but it worked for me on a different thing, so whatever. We'll talk about storing terrain another day. Thank you all much for watching. I do appreciate it. I'm literally going to start the stream on the other channels very quickly, so if you want to come across there, fine. I'm just going to chill first. I'll probably go get some Jaffa cakes, but I'm going to start the stream there. Yeah, thanks you all for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll be chatting on the other stream. We can still talk about terrain if you ever really wanted, but won't be anything interesting. I'll probably buy a resin printer when I get around to it. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye. Thank you all. Bye, Carlos. Bye, Daka, Steve, Matt, everybody. Maximum professionalism. DuckTales, woohoo. Do 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 do. DuckTales, woohoo. Come and watch me play this game badly. Woohoo. Okay, I gotta set it up because I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'll be there as quickly as I can.